Well, welcome everybody. I am really excited to have our guest today, Dr. Bill Crawford. Bill has done amazing work. And let me tell you a little bit about his background before we get into it, just a little bit of back and forth, and you can hear a little bit more about him. In addition to being named Speaker of the Year for Vistage International, as well as the US and Canada, he holds a master's degree and a PhD in psychology from the University of Houston. He's also a licensed psychologist, author of 8 books, and an organizational consultant. Over the last 30 years, he's created more than 3,500 presentations for such organizations as T-Mobile, Shell, the American Medical Association, PBS, and many other organizations and professional associations, both nationally and internationally. In addition, his 2 PBS specials on stress and communication have been seen by more than 15 million people, and it has been quoted as an expert in such diverse publications as the New York Times, Entrepreneur, the Chicago Tribune, Investors Business Daily, and Working Mother, just to name a few. Welcome, Dr. Bill.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing my best thoughts with your listeners and helping folks out today.
Well, that is great. Great. You know, one of the books you read that I have taken a read through, it's made a difference to me, is Life from the Top of the Mind. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what that is about for everybody? Because I know for me, it helped me not forget about just business. It's really personal too.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that. When I created the system, I really wanted people to be able to use it both at home and at work. Because if we have to be one way at work and another way at home, it kind of splits us up in ways that I don't think serves us. So over the last 30 years, I've been working on a system, a philosophy, a framework that I call Life from the Top of the Mind, that actually shows people how to access their best by accessing a very specific part of the brain, and how to avoid the stress, frustration, anxiety, resentment, the stuff that gets in the way of our clarity, confidence, and creativity by avoiding a specific part of the brain. I wrote a book about it. I get to go around the world teaching it. I love to teach it to Vistage members because they're just so eager to hear new information that's backed on science that helps them become more influential in their lives and the lives of others.
So tell me how this thing works, because I can tell you sometimes I'm in stressful situations. I can feel my system change a little bit. What's the neuroscience? What's happening here?
Yeah. So basically, I like to take the brain, which is a very complicated instrument, and break it down so it is simple but not simplistic. Basically, we got 3 parts of the brain. Lower part of the brain is called the brainstem. This is where the fight or flight responses are located. Upper 80% is called the neocortex, what I call the top of the mind. This is where we have access to our interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, clarity, confidence, creativity, compassion, etc. The middle brain, however, is the really fascinating one. It is called the limbic system, and it is the scanner, processor, router part of the brain. So it scans incoming information, processes it or interprets it, and then either routes it down to the lower brain or up to the top of the mind. Unfortunately, it's not very smart, and it's working with old software. So it has a tendency to misinterpret almost anything negative as dangerous and throws us into the part of the brain that's designed to deal with danger. And that change that you notice is actually a chemical change in our brain and body, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol, which are great in a fight or flight situation, but not so great when we're trying to bring our best to a conversation or make a good decision.
So now I'm beginning to understand a little bit. So I hear from my Vistage members. So one of their employees will come in with a major problem, and sometimes they'll say, I was not my best in that conversation. So what's kind of going on here?
Yeah, a lot of times whenever we've dealt with a particular employee in the past and it maybe hasn't gone well, or they keep coming up with problems but not solutions, or maybe there's a certain type of employee that is just kind of, bugs us, gets under our skin. Unfortunately, our middle brain interprets that in a way that throws us into the lower brain, and we kind of start to get frustrated or stressed or annoyed or angry or resentful or feel overwhelmed, whatever, while the conversation is going on. And when we're in this lower brain isn't the part of who we are where we make our best thoughts and bring our best self to life. So what I encourage people to do, if you're going to go into a difficult conversation, always go in what I call the top of the mind. Go in having chosen qualities or characteristics that you want to bring to the conversation, no matter what they say, no matter what they do. So you're not being defined by them, you're bringing your best to the situation, and you're taking 100% accountability for staying in the top of the mind. You know, we always want our people to be accountable, but if we're not accountable for the qualities and characteristics we bring to the conversation, we really can't expect them to be accountable for their emotions and their behavior.
Right. Are there any other ways that we can make sure that we're operating at the top of the mind? So maybe nothing triggered us, but is there a way for us to be constantly thinking and reinforcing to make sure we don't fall into any of these pitfalls that we fall into from time to time?
Yeah, well, first thing we need to recognize is because we're human beings, we will fall into pitfalls. It's not about never doing that.
Yeah.
So when we do, what we want to recognize is, okay, wait a minute. Now I know what's going on. My lower brain is controlling my reactions and limiting my clarity, confidence, and creativity. That's different than this person or this situation made me angry or made me stressed or made me frustrated. So we want to shift from they make me feel this way to, wait a minute, my middle brain is misinterpreting something or someone negative as dangerous, throwing me into the part of the brain this is designed to do with danger. So the first thing we've got to be able to do, and you want to do this before the conversation, is actually shift from this reactive brain to the proactive brain. And I have a model that actually spells brain so that people remember it, that will actually shift us from the lower brain to the upper brain. So the first thing we want to do, everybody's heard when you're stressed or frustrated, you take a deep breath. Not everybody tells you why, though. The reason you take a deep breath is because normally the part of the brain that controls our breathing is the lower brain. So if we want the top of the mind to regain control from this lower brain, then the breathing, saying the word relax on the exhale, that actually does two things. It takes over breathing and muscle tension, which are two things normally controlled by the lower brain. Then we want to it's not just about stopping feeling bad. We want to make sure we have identified the best of who we are. So we ask a question. If I were to bring certain qualities and characteristics to this conversation in a way that made the statement that defined me the way I want to be defined, as a leader, as a parent, as a friend, as a spouse, or if I were doing this in a way that I would teach or recommend to someone I love, what would be the qualities or characteristics I would like to be able to access? And when I ask Vistage members this, they say, well, kind and centered and influential and purposeful and empathetic and calm and resilient, all kinds of great stuff. So you choose two or three of those, say, okay, I want to be calm and resilient and influential. There you go, great. So who am I? So now we want to imagine being that way, because the brain doesn't know the difference between a real and an imagined event. So when you imagine being a certain way, the brain triggers certain chemicals, in this case, serotonin and endorphins, that actually have us feel the way we want to feel. So you breathe, you relax, you ask those questions, you imagine being that way, and then you notice a change. How do I feel differently at the end of BRAIN, the brain model, than I did at the very beginning? You can do the brain model in as little as 45 seconds. So one of the things I talk about when I'm talking to a Vistage group, I say, hey, how valuable would it be if I could show you how to minimize stress, anxiety, frustration by at least 80% in less than 45 seconds? And everybody goes, well, that would be great. How do I do that? So that's what the brain model is designed to do.
And I can tell you it works really well. So, and I really appreciate Dr. Bill had the opportunity to speak to both of my Vistage groups. And it's funny, just last week, I was with a Vistage member doing our one-to-ones, talking a little bit about stressful situation. And he talked about this. And, you know, I came back and I carry certain things in my briefcase. And this is the handout that you provide to our Vistage members. And I pulled this out and he says, yeah, I do remember that. And so we had the conversation. It was very easy as a little of a prompt to talk about the 45 seconds and what they should be doing. And wow, it really helped the situation. and it's going to help him long term. And from time to time, this definitely comes up in conversations I have with Vistage members. It's one of the most memorable things we've talked about because this overarches people's lives, it overarches their business, and it just makes them the best that they can possibly be. And that's what people really appreciate.
Exactly.
And the opportunity to have speakers like you. I'm going to pay you one other compliment. I hope you don't blush at this, but one of your fellow Vistage speakers said this about you, is that you have one of the most important advances in personal and interpersonal effectiveness since Covey's 7 Habits.
Oh, wow. That's so great to hear. It's so great.
Isn't that really amazing? And by the way, not that you ever chase scores, but all of my members gave you the highest scores possible for not only the presentation and the material, but the applicability to their business. Truly amazing kind of stuff.
Thank you. It's what I wanted to do. Whenever I got out of my PhD program, I said, okay, Bill, you've learned a lot of cool stuff, but how can you put it into a system where people know when there's a problem, here's what you do. Problem, solution, problem, solution. It's one of the things I love about Vistage members. They are very solution focused. They want solutions. They kind of have pretty good idea what the problem is, but they're really looking for solutions, and they're open and they're eager. You know, I've made working with Vistage about 70% of what I do. And I understand you're not supposed to make one client 70% of what you do, but I love speaking to Vistage groups so much because of the quality of the people and the perspective. You know, they're looking for a perspective from their speaker, from their group, from their chair, and they're so open to those perspectives. It's just such a pleasure to speak to folks like that.
Well, I'm glad that you do. And it's funny you say that because, you know, Vistage is by invitation only. And so there are 3 things that I look for that is common amongst all the Vistage members. And of course, they are from all different businesses, all different age groups, all different backgrounds. But there are 3 things. 1 is self-aware, 2, that they're learners, and 3, that they got something that they're working on or keeping them up at night. And so it's no surprise that you enjoy interfacing with them because they're so interested in hearing what you have to say and improving themselves. And that's what it's really all about.
It is so cool. And, you know, one of the things that'll happen from time to time is the Vistage member will say, you know, my leadership team needs to hear this. My organization needs to hear this. And so I get to go into an organization or a leadership team, share it with them. And then it's starting to have this ripple effect, you know, all the way through the organization and all the way through the family. People have taught it to their kids. It improves their relationship with their spouse. So, you know, I call this getting paid to do what I would pay to do because it's just so much fun to go around and do this with people who are so open and eager to hear the material.
I share that with you. It is so great to watch people improve, take their game up, accomplish what they like to accomplish. I don't know about you, but it totally gives me energy.
Oh, me too. Me too. I just love it. Matter of fact, one of the things I do is when I'm doing a presentation, I say, okay, I'm going to be here for about 3 hours, but some stuff may come up after this training is over. Tell you what, if you have a question for me after this training is over, all you got to do is email me. And I will be your consultant for free, for life, by email. And I do that because I want to help support people in putting this into practice. What did you like? What did you learn? And how is it working for you so that I can kind of help you put it into practice, fine-tune the system, so to speak. But the fact that it is a system, a part 1, part 2, and part 3, people tell me they just love the idea that it's put in that format because it makes it now accessible. It will take some practice, as everything does, but at least now it's accessible and they know exactly what to practice.
I am glad you mentioned that because I had quite a few members contacting you after the presentation and wanted to engage with you with their organization and to see how you can help people within their organization because, look, organization is only as good as the sum of their people.
Yeah, and you know, the leader has got leadership duties. He can't go around teaching everybody to get to the top of the mind, or she. So, you know, the more that the organization has kind of adopted that top of the mind culture where people are taking more responsibility for the qualities and characteristics they're bringing to work and to home, that's just a win-win-win. And now it isn't all on the leader to kind of make this happen.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to share what you do with everybody. Now, of course, people that are listening, I'd love to have them as Vistage members. But what you're dealing with is something even bigger. So how would somebody get in contact with you if they'd like to have you engaged in their business and do what you do for them, whether they're part of Vistage or not? Would you do that for people?
Absolutely. I do that all the time with organizations, professional associations, keynotes, things like that. And it's real easy. You just Google Bill Crawford, PhD, YouTube, or don't go to the YouTube. That'll take you to YouTube, billcrawfordphd.com. And that'll take you to my website. You can go to the YouTube as well, by the way. But if you want to contact me, that'll take you to my website. Just hit the contact button and put your name and email address and message what you're interested in. I get those all the time. I respond to them. And I have a rather unique fee policy. I call it integrity-based pricing. It basically says, I believe I'm dealing with people of integrity who probably have a certain amount that they can spend to bring someone like me in. If you'll just get me the maximum that fits your budget, I will speak to your organization for whatever that is.
Wow. That is very impressive.